We have to stoically accept the brutal facts of reality. At the same time, maintain unwavering faith in the end game and a commitment to prevail despite the brutal facts.
So he was saying that the reality of the fact is they were in confinement. They were in they were in the solitary confinement, dark room,
in another
being
country.
tortured.
Yeah.
And instead of just saying like, hey, I can control some things, but definitely some things are out of my control. This is my reality. My end game is to get home to my family. Mm-hmm. So instead of just coming up with these arbitrary benchmarks of, hey, maybe by Christmas we'll be out, and then me being brokenhearted and kind of succumbing to that brokenheartedness over and over again, feeling like I'm failing, he never felt like he was failing because the end game hadn't arrived yet.
Right.
That goal he had to get home to the family didn't change, whether it was Christmas, spring, fall, whatever. All right, welcome back to the podcast.
Got another Golden Nugget.
Golden Nugget episode, which is great because I am pretty tired of talking about insurance.
Is it? Is this our second Golden Nugget?
Third. Is it our
second or third? Maybe
the third. Yeah. We've done the 401k and maybe
the assets.
Yeah.
Did the assets one.
Yeah, never sell an appreciating asset episode. So, guys, we're going to jump into another Golden podcast. We wrapped up insurance month. It was a little bit over a month, but we talked about a lot of good stuff. Mm-hmm. So if you missed any of those, go back and listen because, guys, pretty much every single person listening to this podcast is going to be dealing with insurance now or at some point in their life. It's confusing. There are a lot of predatory, salesy people out there that will try to push product on you that you don't need. Insurance is one of those things where if you're not in it all the time, there's a lot of confusing aspects. It can be very confusing. Yeah. And even for me, like even for Josh, like there's times when I'm sitting down and looking at some insurance product that a client brings to us. Hey, I have this. I have to go and do homework on it and brush up on some of the ins and outs of it. So go back, listen through those, muscle through them. Insurance isn't the most fun thing. We tried to talk about some really relevant things that apply to just about everyone. And hopefully you guys grew a little bit by way of education on insurance.
Had some great insurance professionals in here with us.
And estate planning. So we talked a little bit about that.
All right. The Golden Nugget today that I'm going to talk about, I've got written down here is the acceptance of reality or the acceptance of your reality. And I was talking to a good friend of mine, mentor. He's a big entrepreneur, business owner, been very successful. And he decided to start up a business, a secondary business, and got into it. You know, a couple $1 million already dumped into it, bought the facility, already hired employees. And then we had the supply chain shortage, and he couldn't get product. And he needed the product so he could make his product to sell. And so he was telling me the struggles he was going through. And so how he was just kind of like, I'm going to throw my hands up. I just don't know what to do.
He launched a business, dumped money into the business,
had employees,
had a facility that was going to charge him rent, had employees he was responsible for. They got to get the right raw goods to make the product, to make a profit, and he can't get the raw goods.
And he literally could not get them. Ugh. So he was just like, man, I was going to sit there and throw my hands up. He was like, but I started this company for my kids. I'm doing this for a purpose. That was his end goal, his purpose is to give the company to his kids. And he was like, well, I can do two things. I can throw my hands up and just be done and just accept my reality. Or you can accept your reality and then make adjustments and pivot to be successful. And that hit me. And I was like, man, that's a really good point. Because a lot of people out there, you know, they'll get put in hard times or get stuck in situations that they don't know how to get out of. And they just throw their hands up.
Yeah, I mean, how often in life do we? I mean, we're coming up on new. A ton of people are going to make New Year's resolutions, right? And you get into it, and then all of a sudden, you know, I'm going to give up eating sweets next year,
right?
And then 2 weeks in, I get a sweet tooth, and my reality is I want something. Was this important to me? And most of the time we just get caught up and we make a kind of a decision from a defeated standpoint, and we make the wrong decision.
So I was reading this book, and it was talking about this vice admiral in Vietnam War, and he was a POW, got captured, and he ended up being a POW for 7 years.
Jeez.
And they put him in confinement, where he was in a dark room for 4 years straight.
Oh wow!
So during that time, everybody always asked him, like, how did you withstand that? How did you get through? Because he was tortured the whole time and everything. And the guy said, within the people that were in there with you, he's like, who didn't make it out? And he was like, it was all the optimists. Which I was like, well, that's odd. Usually the positive thinking people are the ones that are, that could get out. But he said the reason being is because they didn't accept their reality, and they were always thinking, oh, Christmas is about to be here. We'll get out by Christmas. Christmas comes. They didn't get out. Easter's about to be here. Easter gets there. They don't get out. And then Thanksgiving comes along. They don't get out. So he said they died of heartbreak. And then he came up with this paradox that, and I'm quoting, it says, we have to stoically accept the brutal facts of reality, at the same time maintain unwavering faith in the end game and a commitment to prevail despite the brutal facts.
So he was saying that the reality of the fact is they were in confinement. They were in they were in the solitary confinement, dark room,
in another
being
country.
tortured.
Yeah.
And instead of just saying like, hey, I can control some things, but definitely some things are out of my control. This is my reality. My end game is to get home to my family. So instead of just coming up with these arbitrary benchmarks of, hey, maybe by Christmas we'll be out, and then me being brokenhearted and kind of succumbing to that brokenheartedness over and over again, feeling like I'm failing, he never felt like he was failing because the end game hadn't arrived yet.
Right.
That goal he had to get home to the family didn't change, whether it was Christmas, spring, fall, whatever.
Yep. And so, despite all the challenges that you face, us talking about the stock market, we've been in a bear market for 12 months almost now. It's, do you accept your reality, and do you make adjustments and pivot with your end game and the goals that you've already created in mind? And I think that's the most important thing that we talk to our clients about all the time is, we have the goals that we've already set. Yes, we're going through a tough time right now. Do we make decisions based on emotion, or do we make them based on facts and with our end goal in mind?
Or do we, going kind of tying these two together is the goal, are we going to create these arbitrary things and just focus on those little things, or do we stay focused on that long-term goal? If I'm investing money for my future, whether that is for retirement, whether that's to send a kid to college, if these things are truly important to me, then it shouldn't matter what March looks like. If my goal is 30 years away, then I should not be making emotional decisions based on what happens in March of 2023, right? Whereas that optimist will be like, oh, March is going to be better. And if it's not, oh, April will be better.
Yep.
And if it's not, eventually they're like, you know what?
They're brokenhearted, and then boom, they're out. They cash out. We see it all the time. We don't want to see it, but we see clients give up and they cash out.
Yeah.
And it derails them from their goals completely. And it's all based on emotion.
And instead, what he's saying is if you stay kind of focused on that long-term goal that mattered deeply to you,
and have that unwavering faith and the commitment to prevail.
And he's not saying necessarily, he wasn't saying like just throw your hands up and never make a decision and never try to, he was saying, look at the situation, look at your reality, and understand there are things that you can do in the moment, but those things that you do in the moment shouldn't be driven from what might happen in March.
Right.
It should be, what do I need to do today to make my 30-year goal maybe be realized 10 years earlier, right?
Yep. So I saw a chart when it was with Alliance Bernstein, and they were showing a chart that in the beginning of the chart, it says can act, and which is the time that you, I guess, put your plan into place. And when you're in that situation where you can act, let's say you have a bunch of cash, you haven't done anything with it yet, you have a ton of decisions, right, that you can make with that cash. You can invest it a specific way. You can buy real estate. There's a lot of things you can do at that time. Well, then when you make those decisions, and then as you get further down the timeline, there's a time where you must act. And that's going to be a time where you get to implement all the planning that you've put into place. Well, if you wait too long, then there's a time where, what was it?
I think you should
act. Yeah, it was a can act, and then you should act,
right,
which is when you implement everything.
Right.
And then there's a time where you must act.
Right.
Well, if it gets to that point where you must act, your decisions and everything that all the choices that you had in the beginning start to shrink down, where you only have a few decisions you can make or a few choices. And that's where you make a mistake, and the chances of success drop tremendously because you only have a few choices.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to that kind of like sports mentality of, being forward leaning versus on your heels, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if I'm a boxer, I want to be forward leaning. If I find myself on my heels, it means I got caught.
Yep.
And now I'm having to react and maintain my balance and do and I'm just at this point swinging for the fences.
Right.
And that's usually where mistakes get made.
Which is funny you said sports. So this morning, I had this Golden Nugget that I was working on last week, and this morning I was listening to Tom Brady's podcast, and they lost yesterday. So literally on his podcast, he goes, "We have to accept our reality." And I went, "Oh my God, that's exactly what I'm talking about on our podcast."
Which, and coming from Tom Brady, I don't think Tom Brady's saying, "Hey, we need to just accept the fact that we're bad." He's saying we need to realize who we are, right, so we can make the right decisions right now to be better.
Yep.
We aren't riding this great team to the Super Bowl. We're a bad team that can get to the Super Bowl, but we have to realize now's the time to act. And we have to show up to practice tomorrow,
yep,
like we're a bad team trying to get better, not we're a good team that just had a bad game.
Right. And we have to adjust, pivot.
So his reality is, I'm not the Tom Brady on a Tom Brady team that I've been my entire career. I'm actually like not doing great, and I'm on a team that's not doing great, and we got to work hard.
Yeah. But I heard him say that, and I love that part. But so along with the Golden Nugget, so talk about how we implement that in our practice with our Elements app that we use with all of our clients.
Yeah. So, when we were in kind of the pre-show prep for this, we were talking a little about this, and what really stood out to me is how important goals are. I've been doing a lot of research lately on like the different types of planning that an advisor can do with their client. So in some camps, we have this notion of goals-based planning, which means, and this is pretty traditional if you've worked with financial planners or if you've sat down, even with us, most of the time we want to start the planning process by saying, hey, what really matters? What are we actually trying to accomplish? Well, sometimes people come in and they have these lofty goals, and they don't necessarily have the means to get to where they want to be. And it can cause some stress points, right? So maybe
that's where the anxiety starts.
Yeah, maybe if I only have the ability to save $100 a month, and you're telling me to achieve my goal, I have to save $200 a month. It's just not possible, right? So then they have this other type of kind of planning process that is more about cash flow based planning, which instead of just saying, hey, you need to save $200 a month to achieve your goal, it's, hey, based on your cash flow, you can save $100 a month. So let's just start there, right? And let's build a timeline to say, hey, if you want to, if you wanted to retire in 15 years, and that was going to cost you $200 a month, but you only have $100 a month to save, why don't we look at how long it's going to take you? So now we're letting the cash flows kind of create timelines versus just your idea, right? So there's two schools of thought that are kind of battling it out right now in my sphere of nerdy reading to say, oh, cash flow planning is better, goals-based planning is better. And honestly, I think they both fit, right? I think it's one of those things where we can talk goals, we can do some goals-based planning, then we can assess our reality.
Yep.
And say, look, this is what we can accomplish.
At this point in time.
These are the decisions we can make. but then the other thing where elements comes into play that I think is just wildly different than anything else I've seen in this industry, and why I love it so much, and why we're using it with our clients, and we're just trying to get it into people's hands. So even if you don't typically have that like financial kind of, I don't know,
background or
wealth to work one-on-one with a financial planner, we've built a tiered system to make this affordable and a valuable tool, like as far as like you can get into it. Yep. Even if you just are only contributing to a 401k, you're just getting started. Yep. And the reason why I'm so anxious to get this out there is because it does such a good job of assessing your cash flows. So we can talk the cash flow based planning.
Yep.
We have incorporated this 1-page financial plan, which is very simple. It's not the financial plan that's like 60 pages that cost tens of thousands of dollars, and you know, you're going to get this nice leather bound portfolio that you're going to end up putting in a drawer at your home and
never looking at it,
pulling it out next year and be like, yeah, this was worthless. Yeah. So it's 1 page, and it simply has your goals. It has your purpose. It has your goals, and it has, hey, what is the next thing I need to accomplish? Yep. And we update that next step every time you accomplish the next step. Yep. This is all incorporated into that app. And the beautiful thing about this is we, based on these cash flows and based on the net worth and all this data that we put in there, that people put in there, that you can put this in yourself, is it pulls out certain math equations, if you will, that are very important to financial nerds like me and like Josh. And it spits out this number that we call a financial vital sign. Now, we follow several different of these financial vital signs. And what's really great about this is over time, we also track the mental health, the emotional health of the individual we're working with, because I was just working through a conversation with a client, and he presented a couple options for a financial decision he was facing. And in this conversation, he said, Brandon, I have option A, and I have option B. And what was tough about this is both of them were good options.
Right.
Like neither one of them were a financial mistake. Neither one of them was really better in the long term than the other, and they both accomplished the goal. So what one should he do? What was cool about this is we were able to have a conversation about those financial vital signs and say, hey, if you choose option A, your vital sign here is going to change from this number to this number.
It's going to go up or down.
And when we monitor, which is something that not a lot of financial professionals do, but when we monitored your health over time, the last time this vital sign was this number, you had anxiety.
Yeah, this is how you felt
when it was here. You were stressed.
Yep.
You were worried. You were all these things. And so what I was alluding to was the fact that even though both of these are fine options, one of them would put him in a situation where last time he was in that, like he was stressed. He wasn't emotionally well. You can apply, and we call them financial vital signs because it's very applicable to how we are as human beings with our actual like life vital signs, right? Mm-hmm. In the sense where, you know, if my normal feel good temperature is 98.2 degrees, 98.6. If my normal temperature is 98.2 degrees or 98.6 or whatever, and all of a sudden I'm monitoring my vital signs and I notice I'm starting to feel bad, and I check my temperature and it's 101, right? Now I have a gauge to say, you know, next time my temperature starts to go up, I can expect to feel this way again, right? If, like I like to run, right? If my weight gets to a certain point, my knees start hurting when I run a lot, right? So I know that if my weight starts picking up, the next symptom that I'm going to feel is achy knees, because I'm putting too much wear on my joints, right? Yep. So I need to monitor my weight and keep it at a healthy level for myself.
And the great thing about the vital signs that in the Elements app is everything is based on you. It's not comparing to somebody else or whatever. It's based on your vital signs.
For me to chill out and relax, my heart rate might need to be a certain level where you might be comfortable at a higher heart rate than me.
Yep.
You could be completely normal with a heart rate of 75, and my completely normal heart rate is 68. Yep. Right. However, I know that if I drink too much coffee, so if I call you and say, hey, Josh, can I have 3 cups of coffee today? You're like, Brandon, you can. Like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with drinking 3 cups of coffee. But remember last time you drank 3 cups of coffee, your heart rate jumped up to 80.
And you were shaking.
And you were shaky all day and you felt lightheaded.
Yeah.
You might want to reconsider how this affects or impacts you. So when we talk about financial planning, we want to sit here. We still want to be goal centric. And we want to go beyond goals. Like, goals are what kind of, in my opinion, mediocre financial planners talk about. If they're just talking about a couple different goals, they're not digging in enough. They're not asking enough questions. So for me, it's like, okay, these are the goals, but what's your purpose? Like, what is your tombstone at the end of your life going to say? What's that one sentence summary about who you are? And then once we have that purpose statement for you, your life, your family, then we can assess, hey, are these goals that are getting you closer to fulfilling who you are as a human? Are they in alignment
with your...
Or are they kind of distractions? Or back to this Golden Nuggets thing, are you just doing them because people have told you that's the right thing to say or do when you're talking to me?
Right.
So in that sense, we want the alignment of the purpose and then the goals. And then my job, your job, is to create that very next step so they get one step closer. First of all, they're not leaving confused. They're leaving, hey, I need to do this thing.
Right.
And then they're going to do the thing. They're going to call us and say, I did the thing. And then we're going to give them the next thing to do.
Right.
And every step that they take, we should be checking off some of these goals that are then in turn getting them closer to fulfilling that purpose in life.
Yep. Which helps when we were talking about earlier, when somebody looks at like, all right, if I invest $10,000 today, in 30 years, I should have this much. And they think it's just a line that goes straight up. Slowly but surely goes straight up.
And it doesn't.
But it doesn't go straight up.
It never
It goes up and down and backwards and sideways and all over the place. And if we can fine tune how much that line goes off track, we can really, control that anxiety and that stress to make it easy.
Yeah. And going back to like that accepting reality is, again, when people are their goals are aligned to their purpose, when all that is aligned and they're taking the next steps, we're all human beings. I'm a human being. Josh is a human being. We have money invested in the market. So when we have a bad month, it is completely normal. It's natural to like have some stress or some emotional reaction. But if you call, if you understand this process, it's easier for us to say, hey, are you focusing on March, or are you focusing on your goal that's feeding you closer, getting you closer, moving the needle to accomplishing your purpose?
Same thing with the heartbroken we talked about earlier.
So
the market's going to get better in March. Oh, it's going to get better in July. Oh, it's going to get better in December. And then you just give up because you're just being that optimist.
Right. The end game, why are we doing these things? We're doing them because, and then people want data. So if I can legitimately come in and say, hey, remember this decision last time and how it made you feel? Or, if we're finding ourselves in a situation like right now, for the past year almost, we've been going through these volatile, tumultuous markets, and people get fatigued. Right. So again, a quick call from a client, and it's just like, hey, we're not focused on today, but what am I doing? I'm putting in notes about how you're feeling. So when we get to that point of, should I act? Right. Then I can say, hey, we were getting through this. It's going to happen again at some point in our future. Why don't we do things right now
where you have multiple options?
When we have a lot of options, so we can mitigate the stress or work to reduce some of the anxiety that comes with volatility, or because we don't want you to quit your big goal. Right. I don't want a single client to abandon hope in sending their kid to college or retiring or, gifting to grandkids or just buying that nice sports car once they have time on their hand to cruise around town.
Right.
I don't want them abandoning a goal because of what happened in, June of 2022. I don't want them abandoning all those goals because of what happened in all of 22 or what has been going on since
COVID,
2020
or 2018.
So in that sense, the app is a pretty special place to live because it allows us to do the cash flow planning. Mm-hmm. It allows us to stay goal centric and even go further than that and be purpose driven.
Yep.
And then on top of that, it allows us to monitor the emotional state of the human being. And so that way, when we get back to that decision point,
they're your individual vital signs.
What was the can I, should I? What was that?
It was the can act.
So next time we get to those points of can act, we're analyzing all of our cans.
Yep.
What can I do? And then when it should act, we know what we do. So that way we don't have to get to the point of now I have to act.
Now we must act.
Now I'm so emotional. Now I'm so stressed out. Now my heart hurts so much. I quit.
Yep.
So we want to always stay away from there. And so like the golden nugget of, accepting that reality is to understand, again, to what you were saying earlier, the path to achieving whatever we're set out to achieve is not a straight line. We're all human beings on this earth. We all know that it is tough at times. It is hard. We have things we are going to have to endure. There's going to be loss and sickness and missteps and mistakes and all these things. But if the end game is the most important thing, right? If you don't have a purpose, you don't need to if I don't have a purpose in my life of to why I'm, we're talking about investing because this is an investing podcast. Yeah. If I don't have a purpose behind what I'm trying to accomplish, I'm better off just not doing anything. Yeah. Because you're going to be the optimist that's like, oh, March will be better.
Yeah. Oh, you're throwing darts
without a dartboard
or at a dartboard in the dark. And you're that optimist going, well, one of these are going to hit the dartboard. Eventually, one of them's going to hit it.
And you're going to quit.
But more than likely, the first 10 you throw, you're not going to hit it, and then you're going to quit.
Yeah. I think that, as we head into the end of the year, we have our end of the year financial checklist, and as you're setting yourself up and you're thinking about 2023, you got to understand that we don't know what April of 2023 is going to bring. We don't know what May of 2023 is going to bring. We just don't know, right? And so instead of focusing on such short-term arbitrary things, just say, I'm going to do this until it gets tough.
Right.
Think of the long term. Why am I doing this? If I'm going to set a goal to be healthier in 2023, why? It's not, you don't try to be healthier just for the sake of being healthier. I need to be healthier because I want to be around forever for my daughter, as long as possible for my daughter. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, when it gets tough, I don't necessarily think about the things I have to do. I think about the end game. Right. I don't have to endure 7 years? 7 years?
7 years.
I don't have to endure 7 years of torture in a dark, isolated room. I am achieving the purpose of being back with my family.
Yep.
And whatever happens in between then and now, I'm going to make the most. I'm going to be analytical. I'm going to make good decisions.
Yep.
But it's not about the next torture session. It's about.
That's why he says in the quote, you stoically accept the brutal reality and you take the emotion out of it.
Yeah.
So that way you can make good decisions, you can adjust, you can pivot, so you can reach your goals and be successful.
Yeah. And I think coming from an older, successful gentleman that has definitely went through the ups and downs of life, I think for him to say, you have to accept your reality, he is definitively not saying throw your hands up and just let whatever happens. What he's saying is the second business too, just, it's something that he was he's done it before, and he was very successful at it. So he's just replicating this again, right? So in the sense, what he's saying is my reality now was not the reality that I've experienced before. And if I wanted to try to stay the same person in my new reality, I would have failed.
You would fail, yeah.
He had to change, grow, make decisions. He had to go above and beyond things he'd ever had to do before. Yep. He had to go and shake more hands and see people face to face. He had to, he had to take some risk. He had to put himself out there. He had to adjust, adapt. We've heard the word pivot like 4 billion times since 2020. He had to do these things. That was that's him accepting reality. Him accepting reality is saying, I have to become a new person. So when we're correlating this to like markets and investments and investing goals and things like that, it's saying, hey, there's going to be times when the market gives us everything we wanted and more.
Well, it's like everybody was used to for so long. We were in such a long bull market. People's reality was, I'm just going to keep putting money in, putting money in, and it's always going to go up. It's never going to go down.
And sometimes in that euphoria, we start investing just for the sake of the next return instead of investing because of the
that's
goal.
What's been happening. Yep.
And so now we're being put back into this reality check, saying, hey, this is actually reality.
Yeah.
And
this is our new reality.
You're going to have to focus on the long term. Don't get caught on your heels making decisions about what tomorrow might or might not do. It's, hey, what do I need to be successful? Yep. I need to save $100 or $200 a month. I need long-term gains to be about this much money. Mm-hmm. Like then I'm making decisions. Do I actually need market returns? Can I do something more conservative? Can I put more of my own capital into my future and rely less on the markets? Mm-hmm. Are there other options? Is real estate a viable option for me? Is doing a second job and saving more cash?
That goes back to when you're at the can act stage, when you have multiple options, and then you put a plan in place to the should act, and then you're in much better shape at that point. But if you wait till the must act, that's when.
And I know I can think of countless times
bad things happen
for me personally, and I'm sure we can all think of our own times for us personally, or we definitely know people that have gotten to a point where they didn't do the hard work during the hard time, and they found themselves at a point where their feet were not connected to any kind of ground.
Right.
They were just kind of spinning and swirling and falling, and they just made the decision that they had to make. If you start to fall, like in real life, if I was walking and I tripped and I started to fall, because I didn't plan for it, because I wasn't ready for it, the first thing I'm going to do instinctually is put my arm out to catch myself. Well, what's kind of the last thing that you want to do is put your arm out straight to catch yourself, because what happens is you snap your arm, you hurt your elbow, you bust your shoulder, right? Like that fall on an outstretched hand, that's a medical term because it happens so often. Yep. And people hurt themselves by doing what they felt they had to do when they didn't take the time to plan for it.
Yep.
So, accepting your reality is saying, hey, this is where I'm at. I can choose to be a different person in my new reality, but my long-term, that end game, I stoically can still stay focused on that. And regardless of what happens in the interim, I'm going to make the end game a realization.
That's
I'm going to
unwavering faith and commitment to prevail.
Yeah. And so I think that is a wonderful golden nugget.
Yep.
And I think that we all need to take time, and I think it's a great timing for this golden nugget podcast, because we are all starting to think about, and if you're not, part of the end of your checklist, you should be thinking about things you've accomplished this year
and what you want to accomplish next year.
Celebrate them. If you set out to accomplish something this year and you did it, you should be going to enjoy, like treat yourself to a nice dinner, a spa day, whatever the case may be. Like celebrate the wins that you've had. Now you need to say, okay, 2023 is undoubtedly going to present different realities.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean I have to stop in taking the next steps to accomplish the long-term goals. It doesn't mean I have to abandon all hope.
Yep.
I just have to grow, adjust, and realize that whatever my current reality is such a small snippet of my time here in reaching those long-term goals. So I think it's super timely. Celebrate your goals, your victories from this year, but start planning that 2023. And if you don't have those long-term goals, I would challenge you to have a call with us.
Yep.
We love to talk goals and help people plan for those things. We do it all the time. So I think we're pretty good at it. But if it's not us, you can sit down with mentors, friends, family to say, hey, what are some, help. This is, a lot of times we have this like idea kind of in the back of our mind of what we want.
Yep.
But we've never actually taken the picture in our head and interpreting it into words.
Right.
Can be a challenge. Sometimes one, because we get scared to actually write it down. But two, we're also confused about what's possible.
Yeah.
So if I know one day I want to be work optional, right? One day I want to send my kid to college. Well, what does that actually mean? I have 4 years to finish doing everything that I can to send my kid to college.
Mm-hmm.
So I have 4 years. So if my goal is to send her to, I don't know, Harvard.
Yeah.
That may be unachievable for me, right? So I can set my expectations and plan a realistic goal that is accomplishing me sending her to college. But now I know exactly what I have to accomplish. And if March happens to be a rough month, I still know what I got to do.
You still know what you got to do. Yep.
All right. Love it.
Well, good deal. Well, check us out on www.harpethwealthpartners.com. We've got a lot of information on the website, a lot of info on the Elements app, and upcoming events that we're planning. We've got a Christmas party coming up in a couple days here locally. So any of you guys that are local, reach out to us. We'll give you the invite. And with that, if you have any ideas, if you've been told a golden nugget. So again, the golden nugget idea is you've either kind of made it, you've realized some goals in your life, and you think back and you're like, man, it would have been just a little bit better if only, or I only made it because I followed this little tidbit of advice. Or if you're on the front side of that and you're working towards that and you're doing something just because you kind of feel it's like the normal thing to do, or maybe a parent or a grandparent or a friend or relative, family, mentor told you, hey, this is what you should do to get to where you want to be. Let us do some homework on it. We'll stress test it. We'll put some myth busting kind of homework into it to say, hey, yep, that's legitimate, or hey, here's some other options, and really give you some evidence behind what you're doing. So that way, when it gets scary, you're like, hey, I know it's scary, but there's evidence now as to what I'm doing is good, not just good advice, but good for me and good for right now advice. Yeah. So we're happy to take ideas and do that. We love doing all content, but we especially love doing the content that you guys send us. So we look forward to it. And until next time, we're out. Adios.
We hope you learned from our conversation today. It is important to us that you know this is for educational purposes and not intended to be considered specific advice for any individual listener. If something we discussed is relevant to you and you have questions of how it might be applicable to your specific situation, please reach out to your financial professional. Of course, we are happy to have further conversations with you regarding specific questions or applications to your individual financial situation. With that, here are a few disclosures. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA, SIPC. Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and Harpeth Wealth Partners are separate entities from LPL Financial. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Hypothetical examples presented are not representative of any specific investments. Your results may vary. With that, thank you, and we look forward to having you back. Take care.